Easy Sports Talk Show, Javon Adams and Ed Easy Smith, or I should say Ed Smith and Javon Adams, because you got to put the one that shines in the beginning of the name. We do this thing 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then we also will be, and we got news coming soon. We're doing some things behind the scenes. I was so Ed was hitting me up about some things, that just a couple little Tetris pieces to be put in place for the news that we can share. So we're definitely looking forward to that. And so that's for our Saturday show as well, and we'll continue to do this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I like this. I like this. I like the feel of this. How you doing, man?
Going good, man. I know you had a nice trip out with the family this past weekend.
Yeah.
Got some beach time in.
Yes, sir.
I like that. I like that. I'm gonna have to repeat. I'm gonna have to repeat that myself one of these days. Me and Amanda can get out there and do something.
Man, you know how I do it. And plus, when I was running, I had to pull up on my phone breweries near me.
Oh God, yeah.
So
I
when
know
I
you.
was, so there was, so based upon where we were at, there was one that was right up the about a block and a half away from when I finished my run. So I went and had a couple of pints, and that was definitely cool. But
Gotta reward yourself.
yes, sir. Kind of get those electrolytes, or just weak.
Yeah.
I don't care, whatever. I got to get it in the
You know
system.
those good beers got riboflavin in them. You
Man. So as I'm on my way out there, I'm sitting in the car. My son Elijah and we're just counting down to the beginning of NBA free agency. So I want to get into that a little bit today. Your thoughts on the Suns? Any big takeaways from just overall free agency overall, and just get your thoughts on some of those things. So let's dive into the Suns. The Suns, we know that they couldn't make a lot of big splashes because of where they stand, because of they have the 3 extremely when you look at it, really 4 players that they're paying so much money. When you have, of course, starting from Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and then of course DeAndre Ayton, depending on if he stays the rest of the season, but he's on the roster now. So being able to fill in some of those holes, there was expected to be a lot of retention from players that were already here. To keep them on the roster, and maybe looking for trying to hopefully build this roster by finding somebody finding treasure in somebody else's trash, if it could be said that way. So
Dumpster diver.
what were your thoughts on what the Suns ended up doing? And before I throw it to you, for the longest time, and when I mentioned him, he has been rumored to be on his way to the Suns for the last 5 to 7 years, 5 to 7 seasons. Eric Gordon finally signed with the Suns. He's much closer to the end of his career than he is to his prime. But yeah, so he signed just yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. But what were your thoughts on some of the signings for the Phoenix Suns?
Well, the first thing that I guess I won't say shocks me. I think with obviously DeAndre Ayton still being here, I thought he would. I thought they might deal him, in a package to open up more freedom to operate during the free agency period. But they kept him. Do we think he's going to be here? I mean, there's so much speculation going back and forth. There's no way they can keep him. Yes, they can keep him. No, we'll see. I personally, that's a lot of money on the roster for someone who doesn't want to be here. We'll see how that works out. The part of like with free agency, bro, for me, I mean, you had to go do so much. And here's the thing. I hate to talk about use the terminology of because anybody who makes the NBA, anybody who makes NFL, anybody who's playing MLB, you are a qualified athlete. There are people who talk about my career, and I'm like, well, a whole lot of people wish they would have been there. I was never a high-toted. I was never someone valued at the top of a roster, but I was on the team. So I don't like to make it seem like, well, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. It's because all these guys are qualified athletes to be in the league. I just hate that we were so restricted by the cap that we had. Everybody had to be someone that was a veteran minimum, or we just couldn't go spend any money in free agency. And that's for me, it shows in the names that we brought in, because and you do a great job. You always send me over some links, and we do that all the time together when we're doing our shows. We pass links and stuff back and forth so we can do a little research and everything. And thank God you sent me a link, bro, because I'm like, who are these guys that we picked up now? People
Yeah.
that know, because we know some of the
Yeah. There's
insiders like
some.
Flex and
Yeah.
and Earl, and they get down and dirty in it, and they're like they can tell you. And even my son, because he plays all these video games and
Because of the
everything,
video games. Yes,
yeah,
sir. Yes,
he'll
sir.
tell me, well, he's such and such, and I'm like, who? And I'm looking at the guys we picked up, and we got a great grade, but from the people that are watching, right? And I say
Yeah.
that we got a great grade. We got a great grade as far as what we were allowed to or able to do. They were almost
Hmm.
like grading us on a curve. Like they only
Okay.
got this much to spend, so they went out and got this,
And so
this, this,
based
and this.
upon what they had to spend, they did a great job, basically.
Yes. So
Okay.
that's
Okay.
why we're
Okay.
like I'm seeing like A minus, and but then I'm looking at the names. I'm like, who are these guys? We are literally filling out the bottom of the roster, and they
Yeah.
did a great job of filling out the bottom of the roster, Jay.
Ooh.
So I mean,
Okay.
okay.
I will say this. I will say this in terms of, and I'll mention a couple names. So they keeping Damian Lee. Let's see if we look at Josh Okogie, he's staying with the team.
Yeah.
Let's see who else. Drew Eubanks. Let's see. Metu. I always mispronounce his name. That's okay. Let's see. Keita Bates Diop. Now I've heard of him. He was rumored for a little while, and I hear because he's one of those 3-and-D guys that's going to be one of those things that's a player type that they need.
Mm.
Watanabe. Okay, I guess we'll see. Yeah, and
Here's what I'm saying, Jay.
yeah,
If you went to the average fan or a person that's not really paying attention and you threw those names out, they would think they would think that was a roster for an international team for
mm,
preparing for the I guess the trials for the Summer Olympics or something like that. I
yeah.
mean, for like another country, not even our country. I'm
Okay.
saying some of these names, it's like, you know, I've never heard of them through
What
college.
if I throw this at you? Because you're a chef. So what if I throw this at you? I'm standing in I call you up and I say, Ed, I got, I don't know, let's say $100 to spend. I want to get myself a brisket, and I'm at Trader Joe's, and this brisket, and it's $100 for this brisket. Now you're gonna say, go ahead and buy that, or but you say, nah, why don't you go around the corner to blah 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 market? You can get the same quality of brisket for paying a little bit less money. Or would you say buy that high priced brisket at Trader Joe's or AJ's? I should say that might even be a better comparison.
I guess it depends on what kind of cook you're working with. I mean, if you're talking about me, I say go get that mid grains, and then you could also give me a couple lobster tails too.
Oh, okay,
I'm just saying, and you
okay,
start. I'm just, for me, it is going to be very. And now here's the thing, Jay. We all know that these, like, we're in free agency, and in when we got Bradley Beal, everything looks great on paper. So you got
yes,
a lot of these guys now we're picking up. We got this A minus grade as far as what we were able to do. It all looks great on paper when the rubber hits the road in September and October, and we start watching this kind of bailed out there. And it looks like, hey, we got 4 great starters, and then all of a sudden it comes to our second team. And you're like, people are flipping through the book trying to figure out who some of these dudes are, which we'll get used to them. But me personally, I think they for what I'll fall in line for what we were able to spend.
okay.
I guess we did a good job. Now it's just going to be, does this paper, you study all night for the test, right?
Yeah,
Once 10 o'clock on Saturday morning comes, you're sitting there with that number 2 pencil and, that sheet that has 250 multiple choice questions on it. That's when we're going to find out. Like I said, all
yeah.
looks good now. Mom, I studied my tail off. Okay, son, go get it in. And then you come home with that
You
C
suck,
minus or
man.
non-pass. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, what happened, honey? I don't know, Ma. So we'll see.
Okay.
Here's the thing. In free agency, players, like right now, we got to do our catch up because there were so many players that went. I know you're going to ask some questions about
Mm-hmm.
overall free agency. Man, there was some flip flopping and floozing, and people.
I got one that's going that when I mention this particular player, you might say, yeah, that was it was interesting. I don't. Yeah, we'll get to that in a sec. But I
Yeah.
will say, that I am, I guess the way in which you put it, that based upon what they had to be able to spend, I am impressed with what they were able to get. Now, because there's nobody that jumps off of that list of names that they re-signed or added that makes you say, yeah, that person's going to be a star off the bench. But this is where the big the big if comes in, capital I, capital F. If these players can play up to closer to their ceiling than, let's say, the average of what their careers have been, that median, that then it could be a very solid season and get them far. But I guess that's the difference in that, if you have a player that's closer to his prime, he's going to play closer to his ceiling as opposed to playing, have that dip that you might find or be able or start to see that declining, those declining numbers. And you just hope that based upon these players, they might not be the marquee names, but that they play higher, closer to their ceiling as opposed to the mid level, the median or the floor.
Well, I'll give out my last bit on this is when you're starting with great ingredients like Beal, like Durant, Booker, throw Ayton in there. When you're starting with those type of ingredients, bro, that is so much better than starting with, like we're talking about food, flank steak and all that kind of stuff. We're starting out. Here's the thing. We have the great main ingredients. Now we need to do the side dishes and the seasonings add up to make this a great dish. Okay. And we're gonna find out. You start opening that cabinet and you're like, where's the paprika and where's it? You ain't got none of that. Well, what we got in here? We got seasoned salt, and so you got to start getting creative. And here's the thing: it all starts now. Then obviously there's trade deadlines in the middle of the season. There's possible trade of a DeAndre, blah blah blah. All these things are going to the equation. In terms of trying to make this exactly what you want, which is a championship season. We're looking for a championship season, aka a great dish. And like I said, we got some beautiful ingredients to start out. It's just a matter of, can we close this thing out over the course of these next bunch of months with the side dishes and the seasonings to make it work.
Easy Sports Talk Show. Ed Smith, Javon Adams. One or two signings or just things that happened that made you either scratch your head or say good job. I'll start. So as you're formulating your thoughts there, the first one, Fred VanVleet. Man, my man got paid. I do not begrudge anybody for getting paid, but if you are a team from the outside looking in, I've seen and I've heard more, I guess, as I was listening and on the road, a lot more question marks or head scratches about what the Houston Rockets have been doing. They signed Dillon Brooks, kind of a head scratcher, right? Yeah. And when you're trying to create that culture for a young squad, but Fred VanVleet, they paid that man 3 years, $130 million. Get your money, player. 303, but I want to make sure I got that right. So I'm not trying to give him too much or too little, but they got him, 3 years, $130 million.
130.
My man got paid. That was surprising to me. What about you?
You hit it. Not just the amount that he got. It's the location. It was Houston for me. They actually made a couple of signings that I was just like, wow. They
got Jock Landale from the Suns. And so they signed him. They signed him to Houston.
And I think one of the things we have to throw out there's a minimum threshold that teams have to get to.
Yes.
So, it's almost like you have to spend money. You can't put it in the bank. You have to spend that money. So the Houston they've torn down their roster so much to the point where they have a bunch of young players, not a bunch of high ticket items. So they were able to go out there and throw that 130 at VanVleet. For me, it's like, I guess it's where the NBA, like when in NFL, they're like trying to shave and figure out how to stay under the cap. And, they make sure these teams in the NBA spend to a
I think floor. It's 90% of the salary cap. And it used to be that you had to get that minimum, that floor before the end of the season. Mm-hmm. But as of this year, it's now by starting day,
Yeah.
by first day of the season. So that's why
So
that's what was speculated to be that's why they gave Van Vliet that deal.
yeah,
Yeah.
they had it. They they needed to spend it, so they went out and got it. Does Van Vliet make you an elite, like in the, yeah, you shaking your head over there.
No,
He
no,
doesn't, but
I
like I
don't
said, you
think
had
so.
this, no, not at all. I was just, and he was the largest for an undrafted player in NBA history, not drafted, and all of a sudden now you're making
Get your
that kind of money.
money, dog.
My other thing, and I looked at your Lakers, man. They spent and they kept some of your pieces there. I'm
Yeah.
looking. Please, can you explain something to me, bro?
What's that?
Okay, I'm gonna ask you. No offense. Austin, Austin Reeves seems like a good, decent player. I
Yeah.
heard. I mean, they were throwing numbers around, and like teams were going to be battling for him, and that. And I'm looking, and I'm like, oh, that's still. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess once they, and this is a situation where Lakers didn't necessarily have to spend it. They're not on any, their salary with LeBron alone, with Thanos and AD and stuff like that.
Yes,
Their
sir.
numbers are already high, so it's not like they had to spend it. But I was hearing like, there's no way they can let him go. And I'm just, and you're a fan of
Yeah.
that team. I mean, does one playoff series or season make? I
Mhm.
mean, this dude went from he wasn't even drafted, was he? I don't think he was a
I think he was
non-drafted player.
undrafted. I want to say he wasn't,
So
but yeah, it's
4
the
years,
perfect time.
56.
Last year played well. This year showed improvement during the playoffs, continued to play well. So the spotlight wasn't too big for him. And based upon, as you mentioned in today's NBA, or based upon what's going on today, as opposed to, let's say, years past, they don't have a lot of cap flexibility, right? Because they're hamstrung. So they got to, you can pay a little bit more to keep him on board because you had him on your squad. And so that's kind of, I believe, what that came down to. If he does at least the same thing that he did last year, this year, and get to the playoffs, and he does, then it'll be worth it. What's going to be more of a question mark is Rui Hachimura. I love what he did in the playoffs
Yeah.
in the playoffs against the Denver Nuggets, but
Yeah.
can he do that all season long? And will they use him appropriately to be able to allow him to flourish a little bit more? Or was that an aberration? I think Reeves, I expect him to be consistent in that way. But yeah, it's almost the same thing as with the Suns, where you talk about, well, yeah, it looks cool, I guess, with based
Man,
upon what you had to be able to do, to what you had to work with. So yeah.
that was, that's a lot of money for just a little shine. I didn't, I guess I didn't pay enough attention to the regular season. Maybe he was shining all the way through the regular season. I just
He
saw,
did well. He did well, but here's the
wow,
thing, and we've been in the corporate world, is recency bias, right?
yeah,
Sometimes it's recency bias. Sometimes you get a great review based upon what you did this most recent quarter as opposed to the other 3 quarters. And sometimes you get that poor review based upon what you did in this last quarter as opposed to how well you did the previous 3 quarters. So it just depends on how it works, man.
I was going to say something that might have been very controversial. So remind me after we hit the non-record button to say what I was going to say. It would have been funny, but it might have been a little controversial.
Okay, I like the filtering, the self-filtering. But yes. So, but again, so this free agency, we'll see how this works out for not only the Phoenix Suns, we keep an eye on them, but as we take that zoom out level and see what's going on, Dame Lillard has requested to be traded. Real quick before we get out of here, what was interesting to me, so you heard the same reports and we saw the same things, where Dame on, what was it, Wednesday or Thursday, meets with the team and says, yeah, okay, I'm gonna think about it. All right, we cool. They gave him their pitch, and he says, okay, cool, I'll hold off on that. Free agency starts. They re-sign my dude. They re-sign
His dude.
Grant, and he says, all right, no, I'm good. You can go ahead. You can go ahead and trade me now. You can go ahead and trade me now. I wanted to make sure my dude get paid, so I'm good. You can trade me now. It seems you got to, I guess you got to do what you got to do, but that just seems a little bit disingenuous just on the outside looking in.
Very much so. And if I'm Portland, I'm like, well, if we trade him, he got to go with you. I'm like, we're not keeping him here. You want to get your boy paid? That's cool, but he going
Because
with
he
you.
got paid.
Yeah. You and we've been following this since it, with the back and forth, and Dame wants to be there. Anybody, at this point, and the crazy part is he not only did he came out and told everybody what we already knew anyway. I want to be traded. I want to go to Miami. They've been talking about that for weeks now. We all knew it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know, maybe his ulterior motive was seriously to get Grant paid. He did it, accomplished the mission. Now he's gonna move on, and you know, I think it's a disservice to how, you know, the all this talk and everything, and in the end, we saw it coming, and I don't know, you know, you
It's
like to, it,
we know
yeah,
organizations don't love the players essentially,
yeah,
and so the players when they have the opportunity to pull a fast one over,
yeah,
can't do. I just from whether I'm looking at the organization or the player, I have, and again, I understand it's more of a Pollyanna view of it. But if we have honest dealings with one another, then everything would be
yeah.
great. And then everybody will look at me and roll their eyes, both on the organization side and the
Oh, of
player side, and say,
course,
"You just don't get it, Jay." And I understand. I understand.
yeah.
So yeah, you
This
know,
is nothing new. Even your boy LeBron he's gotten a bunch of his dudes paid over the years. And it's,
yeah,
you know, it's players looking after players. I wish I'd had somebody looking after me all them
right.
years.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. So we do this thing 3 times a week. We will see you on Wednesday. Enjoy your 4th of July holiday.
Happy
So
fourth.
as we always say, go to easysportstalk.com if you want to see how you can support us or even join the newsletter. Go to easysportstalk.com. You can also support us if you look in the link if you're on Spotify, you will be able to see how to do that. But as we always like to say around this time, you can.
Keep tuned in, folks. We got some big news coming.
Yeah.